You already know we can use dragonboat today to do an all-in-one flexible portfolio tool. So this is something you are pretty familiar with already. I just want to double click a couple of things that some of you may or may not use all the strategic pillars, which is totally fine. Depends on your needs. And then what we wanted to do is to make the strategic pillars highly customizable for your company's vocabulary. So how you name it, you can name it the way you want it. The Mighty timeline page does something a little bit of new, which is, so now this is a new timeline page. Let me go down to just show the timeline. And what we could do, for example, is to remove some of the data so that you have a clean screen. So you can see we already grouped all our ideas by objectives, and you can easily create something directly in here and then just say, my new idea for growth. So now you can do this very easily and quickly. And obviously you can update all the ideas here as well. It's a very easy to update here, and it's connected to Jira. So as you update here for the fields already connected to Jira, it goes to Jira. And the same thing for effort. So if you do teacher sizing, for example, you will say this is going to be 8 point, 12 point, or 8 weeks, whatever the unit you use, you can enter the data, it's already here. And that's very easy and convenient to change and update and move things around. Now it goes to the second part. This is something relatively new. We already have this part in dragonboat. It wasn't really exposed easily for you to use. So now we want to expose it easily on the Gantt chart, for example, so you can see it very, very visual, and then use it for discussion with your stakeholders. So that most companies want to do some sort of quantifiable prioritization and scoring. Obviously, we have an effort. That's something related to what it would take to build. We can add additional things. So for example, we can add a benefit. We can add a more, which is a responsive PPM measure. So for example, we'll add this to here. So what it shows you now, it shows you, for example, that you can score the benefits. You can look at the more, which is which use a series of logic. That if you don't have an assignment, you don't have estimate yet, you're still early on, then we take a high level effort to use that to calculate the more. As you go on the path of planning, you start to have, for example, estimates. Then we will take estimate versus effort, because estimate is closer to reality than effort because you know more, and so on and so forth. So from here, you can calculate the more, which is a metric over available resources. So what this one will do for you is you can have a very high-level understanding of the different product features within certain objective and across objectives, so that it helps you to do prioritization. If you do decide, now keep in mind, this is not the only factor for prioritization, obviously, but it will give you some way to at least compare within the same objective, for example, which one is more impactful if we look at these benefit versus effort or cost perspective.
Hi, hi, Becky. Sorry, I just had one quick question. On the previous screen where you changed the objective name, the title,
yeah,
you had, I think, the default key results nested underneath it.
Yeah.
Is that, because that's my first time seeing that. Yes. So you just want to rename. Okay, that's interesting.
Right. You can rename a lot of things differently. So you can rename this one to objective, for example. So just to fill in your company's term, and use this instead of cost strategy, you can call the key result. That's here as well. Then you can add different key results, and some of them, for example, if no longer active, you can also archive them as well. So then you can really manage your strategic pillars in a more controlled way, when your ideas can be kind of mapped into by your product managers and more people that kind of going through the workflow of basically strategic alignment. And leadership level, you agree on what's the objectives, what are the key results, what the strategic drivers are, and then then the rest of the team can start brainstorm and the score, etc. So that's objective, and this basically different strategic drivers. You can add the quantifiable scoring system for you. Now, some people say, "Hey, we don't use this. We use something called RICE." A lot of RICE is one of those popular prioritization way measure as well. Today in the meeting, someone asked saying, "Should I RICE score everything?" I said, well, typically you need a RICE score only when you have a tiebreaker. You cannot decide on whether we should work on feature A, feature B. So at that time, you can say, hey, we want to do a RICE score. So a RICE score, there are many ways to use it. You can look it up. But the way, at least I recommend, is you can always usually use probably relative. So then you can be a more of an apple-to-apple comparison versus if you use absolute value, is kind of harder. So for example, if we say reach, you say how much this one will impact our customer base, it will be 50% of our customer base, and then they will have 20% of benefits. And I think this estimate is half confident. So you have a RICE score of 25. And that RICE score, again, can be also displayed here versus the others. Then you can have it's more of a, hey, what kind of quantitative data I can use for us to decide on prioritization. As you can see, you can show and hide different fields as you like, so it can be more measurable visually. So this kind of highlight a little bit of the how we use quantitative data along with the portfolio data, because just have the score alone, it can't give us the big picture. So in here, it will give us the picture on both the alignment of strategic pillars as well as the scoring within each one of them. So just so you know, if you want to RICE score a lot of things at once, you can go to the idea list and go switch on the score view, so then you can score many things at once a lot easier, and then you can compare them side by side as well. But since we're going to focus on the timeline, so we'll go back to the timeline. Any question? No? Okay. So we kind of went through the scoring part of things. Again, this is customizable for your product management practice. You don't have to use all of them or any of them, but if your PM prefer to use something, or you can create your own custom field to do the scoring as well. Now, let's talk about the planning. I think many of you are already pretty familiar with the planning here, and I don't want to go too much into details. And this one, planning, is, again, highly customizable for your tech management experience. Some companies don't manage resources very, very detailed. They just want to do a high-level t-shirt sizing, and they just move on from it. Some companies don't have a lot of resources, or they manage their resources a lot tighter, so they want to do estimates, they want to do assignment, make sure that resource utilization is at the higher percentage and more control than some other companies. Again, it depends on how your company practice. Then you can use some or all of these type of planning here. So I think most of you are familiar with the estimate and assignment. So I would just talk about the effort, which is a t-shirt. What effort does is you can almost call it effort as a t-shirt sizing. What we do is we don't mandate you what this means. It could mean points, could mean man or person weeks, man or person month. It could mean however your internal team wants to use. The reason you put an effort, one, is understand the cost itself, and two is to be able to compare, for example, what Jira may come up. So I'm going to just put these two things side by side. I put an effort and I put a story points. So what this one does for you is that you have your effort, that's your high level planning. I can also use that pulling out of the Jira to know my story points. So I can see somewhat of differences between the two. So if there's a major difference, then give me ability to say, hey, why is this so different? We should do something about it. That's already at the stage where, if you think about us, it's like, hey, we have high level objectives, we brainstorm and prioritize ideas, and then we start push to Jira. This is your top down planning, and maybe your dev lead said this is gonna be 6 point, 18 point, whatever. And then this is after the epics is broken down into stories. Then you add up that, and then these two things, if they are different, then you may want to make some adjustment. For example, it's a 16th, not 2. Maybe I need to make adjustment to make the timeline longer. And so then you can visualize how it may look like. Maybe you can also change this to, let's say 16, so that you don't have to, but you can if you want. I think we have a sort somewhere. Let me insert this so that, okay. So you can have.
Becky, quick question,
yes.
if I might. So if you want, just an example, this is, if let's say Jira is your source of truth for estimating stories, so you could just leave it as, if story point represents your Jira information, you could just leave that as your only column there and eliminate effort, for example.
Right.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we actually cannot change this. This is the edit up from Jira. This is a read only. And then when you mouse over it, you see this arrow doesn't change. The part you can edit, the arrow will change. The mouse is going to become a vertical, so you can update it. So to your point, Paul, is that you have, so, our framework is built such so that you have a sort of planning cycle, right? And strategic alignment, strategic planning cycle, and then you have a team execution cycle. But these cycles do have to come in together. And the way we come together, you do the planning, you do the estimation, and then once you see what's coming out of the team, then you can say, what are the delta, and then what do we need to do to address them? So because the plan's never the same as reality, but it gives us the ability to iteratively adjust that as needed.
Great, yes. Yeah, I remember that part of, right, where you have the high-level planning, you take a swag at the effort, and then when you get down to the actual planning, you come up with your story points.
Right.
Thank you.
Right, you're welcome. And that's basically that, and it helps you to basically see how, do you need to adjust your plan now already, or you can, your plans are good, you don't have to worry about that. And this timeline you have here is the timeline you communicate to your stakeholders. And then if you see the timeline changing, then you need to do a couple things. So let me show you this. So in here, let's say we show a target. So we have a target start date and end date. That's purely based on the bar you drag. And then you have, let's say we do a predicted date, which is actually based on what is in Jira or GitHub's others, but then all of you use Jira, so we don't have to talk about other tools. So, so what this one here is, it shows you, for example, this is what Jira says you're gonna complete based on what's left in Jira. And this is our planned timeline. Obviously, I just dragged it. So you can see in this case, it's green because we can finish it before. We have some buffer, right? And this one, you have some buffer. But in this one, real-time fulfillment, you can see this one's red. What this one tells you is that our current estimate or communicated timeline, if we did communicate, it shows it's supposed to finish sometime in December. But based on what Jira's progress and what's left, it indicated we won't be able to finish until January. So we have a bit of a gap here. So we need to do something about it. And our goal is to be able to expose this in the future, actually in our next release, to have a little alert here. That alert sign will tell you, say, hey, your timeline is out of sync. You may want to look at it. And give you ability to compare where things are.
Becky, I'm sorry, so many questions. So are there at least two levels of users? Because I can see that there's when an organization starts to use dragonboat, there's going to be a setup phase where, the experts from the program management team and the experts from product management are going to kind of huddle together and say, look, this is how we want to run and set up, and then lock it in. So users, kind of once the two groups get strategize about how to use dragonboat, they're going to get their terminology locked in, their columns locked in, and then the larger organization is going to follow that and not have every person tweaking columns and tweaking terminology.
Right. System, we have admins and users, and then we also have a read-only users. So I think most of people here are probably admins. So then you set up terminology, you set up the columns, and it's actually right segue into you can build those views. So for example, I just built a view, say, share with the CEO, so that this view will include some of the filter and how these things going to be grouped, what's going to show up, what's not going to show up. And this is the one you share with the CEO. Now, I could change something else and say just the high priority features. So then these are the views. You can see the columns are changed in the views because you don't need to show, for example, efforts and points to your CEOs. They only care about who's working on this, where are we on track or not. So these are the things. You can create the views, you can share with the users, so then they can just see what you want them to see, right? You don't have to create many status update slides and whatnot, or even you have status update as a part of overall some other slides. You can easily just take this week from week or whatnot and paste it on there, for example.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Any other question, anyone?
One quick question on following those lines. So I give also access to one of the product manager here, but not as a read-only user. So that's probably why. And we try to iframe one of those view into Confluence.
Yeah.
But she was able to, I mean, it worked out, right? But she was able to like modify stuff. So I'm guessing read-only users cannot, they won't be able to like, move stuff in the timeline, correct?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So read-only user cannot move things on the timeline, and only the writers can. Yes.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Just going through. Thank you.
Yeah, you can. Yes, you can iframe this into Confluence.
It works for us. When we communicate to our team, instead of having them use a separate URL, just say, hey, just go to Confluence. This is where the product blog is, and at the bottom we'll just embed the timeline. So that actually works out. But yeah, I mean,
perfect. Yeah, you can use those links as well. So when you define the links, you have all the what do you call that? All the columns and filters. Then they will just see only this if they're read-only user in your organization. And if you use Google Login, everyone click once, it will be automatically having the read-only access. So they will be able to view the link you sent to them.
And you're saying you were making improvement on that as well, on the iframe?
Yeah, we're making improvement on the iframe so that it doesn't load as much stuff. It just load the data itself, for example.
Oh, that'd be
make it headless. Yeah. And then also we are also working on something as like your Confluence login. So if you have a Confluence login, you will automatically be read-only user. So you don't have to deal with, if you don't use Google login, then you would have just Confluence as well. That's something on our roadmap. Not promising timeline. I'm just sharing with you that's something we do. We definitely have on our plan. You can use it. I think a lot of our customers use dragonboat as part of embedded in Confluence. So it will really help quite a bit in terms of how your users can access data. Okay, so we kind of talk about the allocate, estimate. Oh, didn't talk about allocate. So a couple of things we can do. If you're familiar with the forecast page, you already know that forecast page has a table. So what we do here is you can also display the resource table. Let me turn off the. Okay, so now you can see is that what we had earlier on the forecast page, we moved to here. So now you can do your planning and the resourcing allocation, all of them in one place. So you already know how forecast page works. So probably don't go too much deeper. And here you can see the resources, and you can see the demand from your resources. And we can show different columns, for example, for you to prioritize better. For example, I can remove the health, I can remove the owner, and I will have, let's say, a score here. So that give you some ability to prioritize things in a way that's easier. So now you can see that that we have the ideas lined up. If I want to see who is competing for resources, and I click on the line, you can see more of them being competing against each other. And if you want to know how I allocate my resources across different strategic pillars as one of the ways to help me prioritize, I can use the allocation just like in the forecast page as well. So you can see where you allocate your resources. Now we use a theme. How about we use objective? So now you can see that most objective goes to most of the resources go to retain customers. And if we want to change, if we need to balance out because we don't have enough resources in here, let me change this to retain customer. Now we can say, okay, these are more require resources on retain customer. Maybe we can move some of them out or more. So you can see this one didn't make a whole lot of progress neither. So you can actually make changes on timeline easily. So basically what the new manage page or new timeline page is to allow you to do both the planning and prioritization as well as resourcing and allocation in one place, so you don't have to jump between places. Any question from anyone?
Yeah, I'm sorry, where did you access that pie chart from?
Here, if you click on the dotted line, there is allocation.
Oh, yep.
And where you can see the pie chart. And if you want to change how you want to group things, so right now we group by objectives. If I want to group, for example, by roadmaps, I can change that real time so that you can plan. You can plan where you're going to spend your resources before it's too late. Most of the tools, well, actually all the tools I have ever used, I can only do this kind of allocation after. That's too late. I want to know it ahead of time so that this will give us the ability to not only we prioritize linearly. Linear prioritization means you score things, but we more importantly is to prioritize across the portfolio. So we all know, or actually most of us know, that the portfolio, which is the company or product organization as a whole, the outcome of that is not based on the number 1, 2, 3 things we did. It's really where we allocate our resources would have a much bigger impact on our outcome. Imagine we prioritize only based on the more, we would be potentially under supporting less. We support less about some of objectives because those were invisible to us, right? So then we would potentially do a lot of, like a retain customer was one of the most allocated one based on our allocation, right, before I move it. So that means that we unknowingly are not growing our revenue. And so that the portfolio's view is super important, give us ability to look at not only linear prioritization from 1 to Z, also give us ability to look at a portfolio, both in terms of how we grow revenue, how we, from a business objective perspective, also from a product theme perspective, so that you will not, for example, over allocate resources for one categories of product, one categories of market segments, etc., so that you actually make a very informed decision on how products should come together.
Hey, Vicky, I have two quick, hopefully quick, if not, we can take that offline, question about resourcing. So, is it possible, maybe see the advanced allocation, to only, for example, at the bottom here, you have either 2 or 3, to only have like that, we need like someone for 50% of the time.
Right.
Is it possible to do so?
Yes. So let me do this. Let me add assignment and estimate back to here. So there's estimate and also assignment. In both cases, what you can do is, so let's say if I'm going to add a estimate, oops, sorry. if I add an estimate, let's say this is let's say assign this to John to work on this feature. I can make this into 50%. So then we allocate half of the person working on this feature. And if we have 50%, it will show up here as 50% as well. And we can make this into 2 decimal points. So it will show up as 2 decimal points for John. Let me unfilter so you can see now you can have these smaller multiple decimal points on features.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so let me unfilter so you can see more. So this is the assignment for individual person, and as you can see, the reason it default into assignment is because this idea is confirmed, and this idea is actually in planning. So if you click on, it will show you an estimate. So if I would say I need a half of someone from a design team, a lot of time design do have a I don't know why we don't have. Okay, let's just say full stack. If I have someone from design and only need half a person to work on this for 6 weeks, and then we will only account 6 weeks stretched out 50%, and the account on the bottom you see the 50% being shown here.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that will give you ability to, you have half the person or one person and whatnot reflect here.
Yeah, that's perfect, and it's exactly for our design that we need that, because our designer obviously have multiple projects at the same time, and our engineers. So, okay, awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
And the other one that I had, I should have asked earlier, was so for the predicted end date. So I understand we can set the settings, right? Story points per day.
Yeah.
We do have multiple teams that have different velocity.
Yeah.
Is there a way to set up different settings per team, or is that a feature request?
This is being worked on. So I think this is something coming from, I think you mentioned this earlier, and a couple of other customers asked for us as well, is that they have different teams have different velocity. So can we have a different mapping? So we are basically working on this right now, and it will be released in a week or 2. Which means you can create a different integration template, not integration template. So today, when you go to integration, there's a progress tracking that you have a progress tracking template, right? So you say story points and whatnot. That feature will do is that you can add a custom mapping. The custom mapping will apply to project A, project B, and whatnot. So you can use that to say this is my mapping. Maybe one team use story point, the other team use time tracking and whatnot. So that based on the Jira project, we would map it differently based on your definition. So there will always be a default. So if your project didn't fall into any of the specified ones, we use default. And if you're one of the Jira, or if the specify has like 3 different Jira project that will follow a different one, then we will take that. So that's a feature we basically are working on right now and should be available in a week or 2.
That's great. That's great to hear.
Awesome. Good. That's where we have these conversations so that we can get better understanding of your needs. And then we work very diligently with you guys to make sure that works for you in terms of planning and tracking, etc. All right, cool. So that's the design and resourcing. So plan and predict, we kind of already went through a bit. I'm not going too much into details. Let me uncheck this resource table. It's not too busy. And let me show you the, probably this is good enough. The progress and maybe the owner. We probably don't need this anymore. I'll put this on. So as you can see, we can share what the sorry, I forgot to turn on the dates, and there you go. So since we're not doing resourcing now, I'm going to remove all the other planned and you can see your plan and predicted dates. Now, let me actually do something. This is something that it's a caveat I want to make sure that you are aware of, which is in dragonboat, there are multiple timelines, just like in life, how we plan our projects, right? Initially, you have a timeline based on, I can just drag and drop things. I didn't have anything, just like this. I can change it however the timeline I want it, so I can create a visual roadmap very quickly. Once you create a visual roadmap quickly, and then you will say, okay, looks like we're going to work on this. Let's estimate it more. We have more detailed estimation or resourcing. That timeline will change. It will not necessarily be the same as what you used to have. So this timeline is actually based on your estimate, not your just sort of out of the thin air sort of the planning, right? You can see that date is a little bit different from what you have here. So this is the timeline based on your estimate. And this is the timeline based on what you had earlier t-shirt sized. And that for us, either running product and programs, we want to make sure that we have a good understanding both on initial timeline, which is targeted, and also resource timeline. If we need to change it, we need to update it, we probably want to update it so that our stakeholders will have the most recent one. And the ones that, this one, for example, is obviously way behind. This one's supposed to be done somewhere here, and you can see that what Jira says is somewhere here. Let me make this monthly so that you can see better. So you can see there's a way big of a gap. This is where you can identify the gap, be able to manage your stakeholder expectations. And based on this one, you probably won't be able to make it, even cut scope. So it's probably give you a good indication, just saying, hey, I need to communicate to my stakeholders, hopefully not wait this long. And we are probably will release this later, and then they can adjust their downstream activities, go to market and whatnot. So I'm going to pause here. Any question from anyone? No? All right. So we are going to talk a little bit about the communication and the views and share, etc. So I think that this is something we kind of touched upon a little bit earlier as well. So a view is something that included both the filter and the columns and displays and groupings, etc. So as you can tell, this product, dragonboat, is very flexible. So if I want to create a view for my executives, and then they care about objective, right? Because CEO say, hey, what are our objectives? What do we do to these objectives? And you can create filters to say, I only want to narrow down to just this quarter. I don't want to show these timelines because, obviously they don't need to see the level of this kind of details. And they would probably want to know the owners, the health, and then probably the progress. So I can create something just like that. We'll show you the columns, show you the data, and you can either save a view or you can update the existing view. So I can update the existing view as well, share with the CEO. And then you can save it, and you can also share it as well. So these are the ways for you to give different stakeholder different things. So for example, for your CEOs or your business leads, they probably care about objective. But some of your stakeholders care about when can I get this? So in that case, you can, so like a product roadmap. If I'm running head of the product, I have a couple of teams under me. I want to know what each team's working on and then where we are. So you can manage something like this. Group things by teams. And so on and so forth. You can create that and then save it and then share with others. Question? Anyone? All right. So I just want to double click a couple of things. I think most of you already know, which is the key thing of our building product is more than just a list of things. And then we take a portfolio view. The portfolio would account for both the customer, multiple segments of a customer, so that the customers are linked to product. portfolio, you also need to take care of the outcomes. So what is the business goals? And we need to balance both customers' outcome. And then finally, we also need to consider our teams. A lot of times, people don't realize and forget about the teams and resource bottlenecks are a key elements to delivery. So we want to tie all of the things into one place. And if your stakeholders or some of your members don't like use Gantt charts, they can do the same, use spreadsheets like Experience, and they are just as flexible and all in one as Gantt charts. You can use a board format, and I'm sure you're familiar with that already. And then you can also use a slide format for reporting and then sharing. So that's it. Conclude today. It will cover, so the Mighty timeline today covers every element of your prioritization, brainstorming, visualizing, planning, allocation, resourcing, and then communicate to your different stakeholders with the different views. And that's it. Any question, anything that you want to see more, or open for questions?
Well, thanks. That was great. That was super insightful. I think the only thing that I would love to see, hopefully the others as well, is manage the staffing. Yes. So when you confirm an ID, it will automatically assign to based on the skills set, right? So if I go, let's say someone is on vacation, an expected vacation like next week, how would that work? Would I go and add like a assignment not attached to an ID?
Okay. So I don't know we have, so basically, I don't know we have it today, but you can create something called, you can call something kind of like out of office.
Oh, okay.
Just create one here as a project, and then you will say this person is on holiday or maternity leave and whatnot. So you basically use this placeholder to add to it. I think this one's filtered out. I need to update that. But you get the idea. You can create that the vacation and the holiday as a placeholder, and then you can use block people as time.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And let's say that person already has an assignment, right, from an idea. If I add to it here, it's not going to show that it's overbooked, and so I still have to manually go back to the idea that was previously assigned and basically reassign it, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but
okay. So I think what you're trying to say is, let me just try to see something. Okay. So so what you're trying to say is, oh, sorry, this filter is a little bit annoying. Okay. So basically what you're trying to say is that if someone, do you want to see whether someone is overbooked on here?
Exactly.
Okay. You can, let me use an example. So I'm going to assign me to, one of the ideas, and I'll create another one. I can assign to a different. So what happens is now you can see that I'm overbooked just by virtue of having a couple lines here. We also have the ability for you to display the allocation. So if you see they are all 100% allocated, so this time is not good. That person is overbooked.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now I also want to just go to the timeline page because we're doing something a lot different. Not a lot different. We are solving one of the problems our customer had some time ago, which is ability to show both estimate and assignment. So, okay, let me do this. So you have estimate and assignment. So what this one does is to, let's say using this as an example, I can, let's see if I can find something. Okay, let me confirm this one. So I will confirm this idea. And it will assign this designers onto this idea, and also it will show you the need to find a better example so you can see both. Let me refresh this. So what we're trying to do here is, okay, there you go. You have a designer assigned to it. You can assign to a different person. And you can also see that person, so that you have a task. This is assignment, and this is the designer. And you can make changes on to different person, for example, so that you have you basically can compare your estimates and assignment in one place if you want to see both.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So previously, you can only either see assignment, or you see tasks. You don't see them together at once. So for you to assign someone, then you may not want. So we did auto assign goes to a different person, but you said, well, that person actually not the best person for it. I'm going to assign to a different person. You can assign that by a different person so that it will go to a different person. You can compare your estimate and also your assignment in one place. Then you can make changes on assignment easily.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Okay, cool. I know we probably have some more work to do. For example, to show you at the bottom, instead of showing you the teams, we can show you individuals. These are the things that we'll continue to improve on. So you can also see individuals allocation at the bottom instead of a team. And that's something that we're planning to do in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anything else, anyone?
Hey, Becky, this is Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Hi. I may reach out to you because I don't know if my question's going to take toward the end here at the 8 minutes. Looking more at getting information around the draft mode, since we're going to be starting our 2021 roadmap and that type of thing. Yeah, trying to better understand this piece of it. And finding out exactly what's the best way to utilize, because we'll obviously need to use the estimate side for team. You know, we may need a developer for 6 weeks out of it, you know, and that type of thing.
Right.
So I'll just set up some time if you could send me the link to get on your calendar.
Yeah.
Around it.
Yeah, sure. Would you like to maybe share a little bit more of what, we still have a couple minutes left.
Yeah.
What are you trying to, so my assumption would be you have, why don't I let you go?
Oh, it's okay. So we're working through our objectives, or our strategic initiatives is how we define them. And they're extra large projects that we know are going to take, extra larges are usually over 16 weeks, right? And so we know that we'll need a developer during that time, and we'll need QA during that time because we are in an agile state. Right. So, you would need that developer for that length of time.
Right.
Through the whole thing, off and on. Right. And so trying to get that out there, and again, they're going to be assigned potentially multiple things, because we got to allocate or leave some allocation for prod support. Yeah. We have to leave some allocation for filler work as far as small and medium enhancements. Mm-hmm. So trying to better estimate and be able to have that conversation with our stakeholders that say, hey, you have given us 3 projects that we consider extra large, and we're not going to be able to do them all at the same time, obviously, because of resourcing. So it's that conversation that we're trying to get to, and the draft mode would help us be able to say, hey, this is one draft. Mm-hmm. Of what we could do. Right. Does this look okay? Or here's another view or another draft. Right. So we potentially could have 2 to 3 to 4 different drafts based on our estimates. Right.
Right.
That's what I'm going for.
Right. You can totally do that with a draft mode. So I would, if I would step by step, I will start with getting estimates. So if you want to making estimate really easy and fast, you would put an estimate somewhere like this, right? So you can say, I would need, let's say 16 weeks. And I would need, maybe 20. This one needed 20 weeks. So now you start to have the things will add up for you by your different features and initiatives, and it will show you the effort you needed. So that's like the first part. You can quickly getting your estimate from your engineering team, for example. Now, then it comes down. Then the next step will be something like a draft, because we already captured the estimate, right? So then we can come down to here to see, hey, I want to see the resources and how we are going to support that. So I'm going to check on the resource and being able to see how this would play out. Right. So you can see these are the engineering needs, and this is data engineer is what we just did earlier. So you can see what this one needs data engineer, for example, and that so on and so forth. You can use all these views to share with your stakeholders on what works for them, basically.
Okay. So the best way to do this would be to go under the forecast and go under list. And then we're getting some new job titles and everything. So under effort, I would say, based on what I'm seeing here, it's better to go weeks, because that's what we are utilizing, right? So 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever.
Right. In your case, you probably use a week because that's your internal term today.
Okay. All right. Because we're also getting different job titles or skill sets. So I've got to work through everything that I currently have is changing. So, okay.
Yeah. And then, one of the things you want to think about is that, obviously we want to make sure that the skills and the teams are mostly for planning purpose. And then, we may or may not need to type their organizational reporting structure. It depends on, again, your company culture. Most of the time people use that is a team and that's a skill. They're not fungible. And then we just stay at the level that's not fungible.
Yeah, because right now I'm not, I'm thinking if I get to this level and do the estimates off of the forecast list, I think that's going to help. I just need to update or redo our skills based on our new job families.
Yeah.
And so that should help.
Yeah.
There anything?
You can do it directly here. That will help you quite a bit. So let's say if I put a skill here and I will look at individual's name and I change the skill, it will just save across the board. So if I will change this to, let's say I'm going to say a new skill, and then you can, new kill. You can create a new kill, and that would save across the board. So then you can apply this to the people that you have here. You can see it as you create them.
Okay. And there's still only one draft mode, right? So you've got different views. There's still no draft mode like draft 1, draft 2, and I could compare them side by side.
Yeah,
correct?
So what we recommend you to do is to take a screenshot of this.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, that's actually almost all our customer does, because things are so fluid. If you really want to freeze it, then and then obviously unless things are moving, right? These features are still developing. So our recommendation is to have different views and in the screenshots, so that you can compare that even side by side, one out with your stakeholders, and later on, once you decide on one, you can use that kind of plot this back in.
Okay.
I'll have to drop off on my side, but I just want to thank you, Becky.
Thank you, Brad.
See you guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. I still think I might just want to reach out to
Yeah,
you,
please do. Please do.
Becky.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm thinking that can you do, because you have your breakdown of epics, can you do resourcing or estimates at the master epic level?
We have a different way. Why don't we take this offline? We can talk about it.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. If you can send me how to get your time, that would be awesome again, because I don't know if I can find it again. It's probably in Slack. But
yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Becky. I got to drop off too.
Thank you. Bye, Susan. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye. You too.
Becky, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Sure. Thank you.
A lot there to ramp up on.
Will do. Thanks. Cheers.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Alex. Any more questions? So we're wrapping up?
Yeah, no, nothing. Thank you so much. Once again, super insightful. I think, and maybe it's on the website. I need to look, we don't have to talk about this right now, but it'd be great to see more about the ring aspects and how to do loopbacks. I don't know, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So we have, the target date, predicted end date, and then be able to look back at, hey, this is what was planned at the beginning of the quarter, and this is actually what happened, and we actually had to update the target date multiple times because information coming from Jira was updating all the time. But that might be worth a whole new webinar or a separate conversation. But
yeah. So the Jira target end date came from Jira. We actually have all this logged in our system. We can easily pull this out into a report. We can definitely have a different conversation around this, see what people, how they use the information and how they want it, and we can bake into our future feature.
Yeah, okay, so that sounds good, because I know that's something we like to look at, right? What's a delta? It's like, hey, November you say was going to take, whatever, 6 weeks, ended up 12 weeks. But yeah, anyway, thanks so much for today.